Hey, 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 I'm Michelle.
And I'm Gretta.
We are girlfriends who have always been seekers. We love learning, sharing, and most of all, we love having those soul-to-soul moments with our girlfriends.
Our podcast is about spiritual connection and sisterhood. You are not alone. So grab your glass, get comfy, and join us as we make some noise, light up the room, and
Get into it.
Hi, welcome friends. We have a very exciting episode for you today.
It's very colorful.
I'm thrilled to introduce Kate Meet with Colors by Kate. I literally stalked this girl. I tracked her down on Instagram. I had started to kind of notice this color analysis trend going on social media. And I was like, I want to know what my colors are. I was always kind of told, oh, you're jewel tone, you're this, you're that, but I didn't really know. And I felt like my closet is just this total mixed bag of all kinds of stuff. When I came across your profile, I was just like, yes, this is the woman we want on our podcast because you were so knowledgeable about this topic, such a professional. You also just looked like you were having a lot of fun and passionate about what you were doing. And that's the kind of women we like to have on our podcast. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. And I'm so glad to hear that that's how it came off, because that's really the vibe I try to bring to the space is just, this is supposed to be fun and full of expression. So really excited to talk about it all day today.
Yes.
It is
great.
definitely fun. And we got to have a fun day with you just before recording this podcast, actually, and learn all about our own colors. And wow, is it a process to really narrow it down? You are so thorough in your work, but like you said, so fun as well. And I love that Greta and I walked away with actually some little cards, which big reveal, we thought that we would be within the same color palettes, and we learned we are not.
Yeah, that was mind-blowing. So
Super.
I feel like for those of you who are listening and you're like, oh, what even is that? Or is that even that difficult to figure out? Or it totally blew our minds, because I think anyone would look at us and think, oh yeah, they're the same. But there's so much more that goes into it. And I think that was what was really amazing information that I would have never known unless we booked our analysis with you. So if you want to just tell us, oh, are we doing our reveal right now?
Yeah, but why not?
Why not?
Let's just say what we are. And then as you explain it, you know, people can get a better sense of what we're even talking about.
Yeah.
Because these words may not mean a whole lot to somebody who doesn't understand what it is, but it is just fun to know that we are very different and we didn't think we were. And it's funny because for our podcast, sometimes we'll show up wearing very similar outfits or similar colors. Today, Greta totally displayed one of her colors, and I still kind of took that little rebel road, and I'm still wearing black, but I did add a little bit, earrings and, you know, the jacket. And so anyway, it's just been fun, but here's our little reveal. So I am a summer soft.
Which I can't believe that, because I would have had you pinned as a bright winter. I'm a bright winter. I mean, they're so much more than even what these colors show, but that just blew my mind.
It's wild.
And we had a lot of similar things still through the process, but then there's just, we're almost opposite we are opposite on the color wheel. That's crazy.
I feel like you guys had a very similar experience to a lot of people, which is if we look at your color characteristics kind of on the surface, right? You have deeper hair color, you're in that kind of light category for skin tone. You have these beautiful kind of lighter green eyes. So we'd look at you and go like, yeah, it would make sense that you're in the same spot. But color analysis is so much more, what's the word I want to use? It's such a specific and kind of diagnostic process. We can never just look at someone on the surface and say like, oh, definitively you're going to be this way. And in, you know, the three characteristics that we look at temperature, which is cool to warm, intensity, which is bright to soft, and then value, which is deep to light. And in your case, you're actually the same in two of those metrics. You both have a medium value, which means that you're, pretty tolerant to light and deep colors, but your best colors are kind of in those middle ground areas, right? You're both more in the neutral space for temperature. Though you lean slightly cool, both of you, you're not super cool nor super warm. It's that intensity piece that actually your skin is very different, right?
Oh.
So Greta, you have a much brighter kind of intensity to your complexion and to your features, whereas you have a much more soft and kind of gentle intensity, Michelle. So that's the space where there's like actually quite a big chasm between you two, despite the fact that if we just look at your kind of colors on the surface, it feels very familiar, like still similar.
Yeah. And I think what was really interesting to me was as a kid, it was like, oh, you have dark hair, you have light eyes, you're a winter. People were really quick to put you in that category. But at the same time, you were saying it doesn't even have to do with the eye color. There was a point where you wanted Michelle to close her eyes because her eyes did complement so many things. It was kind of hard to not look at them. But it's more about the skin.
Yes.
And the undertone of the skin specifically.
Yep. And that is something that does kind of vary between different color analysis systems. Certain analysts kind of weigh those different components. So skin, eye, hair color in a similar way. In the system that I use, I think the system that really is getting more and more popular as time passes is focusing in on that skin first and foremost, because it's really the most stable thing across our lifetime, right? Especially as we love to dye our hair or we're going to go gray at some point. The skin is really that anchor point, and it's the piece that changes the most, right? So it's really important to focus on it, but it can be hard when the colors of our skin are actually telling a slightly different story than the colors of our eye and our hair color. And how do we kind of weigh that? Which is why I like to joke a lot of times, I wish I could cover my clients' eyes, especially in your case, Michelle, because even though your undertone is cooler, you actually have more of a neutral to warm eye color. So you have some connective tissue to that warm side. We just don't ever want to let your skin kind of get left behind.
Yeah, that's what I thought was so fascinating too, because people notice that about me first, right? Is they gravitate to my eyes. But when we were changing the color scheme and seeing the brightness of the overall skin tone, I mean, yes, my eyes were still kind of a focal point, but they didn't take over.
Yeah.
And so that was really interesting because there were a few times where you mentioned to both of us, okay, the eyes are what's coming forward, but like, how do we just get this full illumination of your entire face, not just popping of the eyes? Mm-hmm. And that's so true, but you don't think about that. It's like, oh, if I accentuate my eyes, then they won't notice anything else.
Right.
But really, we want our whole face to be what people interact with, not just the eyes.
I think Michelle and I both were always drawn towards green too, because that's another thing everybody, as we're growing up, oh, you have to wear green. You have those green eyes. I literally turned green at one point with some of the fabrics that you put against me. So it's like, no, that's not always a good thing to just like match your eye color. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people that have the bright blue eyes like you do that just go to blue all the time. But if it's not in the right shade that complements your skin, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that draws a lot of people to color analysis is that feeling of disconnect between what the world is telling them will be great or perfect for them.
Yeah.
And then they try those colors and sometimes it works. And then other times you put them on and you're like, what is happening? It doesn't feel like me, or I just don't feel super confident. Mm-hmm. It's like that classic, you buy a sweater and then you put it in your closet, and every time you put it on to try to wear it out with your friends, you're like, this ain't it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about this, but it's just not working.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Greta, you touched on something important because you mentioned the word shade, and that's exactly it. It boiled down to the same color, just in a totally different shade. Changed the whole look. I went from looking like I didn't sleep for 3 days to like, I just maybe got a little nip and tuck situation going on in my, face. It was crazy. So that was really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. I mean, there were moments where you put different shades of fabric on us and it looked like we had our eyebrow actually had a lift to it, or the shadowing of our jowls just completely disappeared. Or on the other hand, it brought them out more. Mm. And there were some fabrics that you put up against me and I felt like I looked like I aged 10 years. And then the opposite with the right colors that had that brightness.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it than I think people realize.
Yeah. And colors are truly magical in that way. I think the way that they can make us feel, the way that they affect our perception of our features is so powerful. And I think to be able to create a space where you can really explore that in a way that you've never gotten to and really I think maybe in some ways, I hope we're fighting some of those kind of negative self-talk things that we fall into. One of the ones that I do all the time is like, my dark circles are really dark, right? So like I look at myself without makeup on and I'm like, yikes, dark circles. But then you put these colors on, you're like, oh, I don't actually have these huge dark circles. It's just that this particular color brings it out. And one of the things I talk about a lot, especially when I'm doing larger group or party appointments, the whole point of color analysis is that the color is doing its job to flatter you. So when we're talking about the ways that certain colors can bring up some things that don't feel super comfortable for us, or that's kind of bringing up some insecurities, I always remind you that the color is the thing that needs to be doing its job to match your skin tone and your features and all the things you want to bring out. And my best kind of proof that there's nothing inherent about the way that certain colors affect you, and again, potentially a more insecure kind of bringing up way, is because when I take those colors away and I put a different color on, it just disappears, right? And so I think that's the power of color analysis, is it kind of confronts this idea of like, oh, all these things that I'm maybe insecure about are not always inherent to me. Maybe it's just something about what I'm wearing that's affecting my perception of these things.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
And we literally saw it happen right before our eyes. Yeah. I would watch Michelle's whole face brighten up and look like she had a facelift. Not that she even needs one. The colors really gave that pop. And rejuvenated feeling. And I saw it with myself. I was saying the green made me look like a walking zombie from the living dead. And then the right green, though, it was like, brought out this color in my face and lightened up the dark circles. It is amazing. And I don't think people really realize what a benefit going to see a color analyst really can provide.
Yeah. I think sometimes it feels a little shallow or vain to be so focused on your appearance, or to like really be kind of thinking about like, oh, how exactly are my dark circles showing up today, or how my wrinkles showing up today? But the power of confidence, I think, is so underrated. And I think we live in a world of color, right? Like we interact with each other in this world of color. To ignore it, I think, is a little bit insincere in the way that we actually experience the world.
Right.
And so I think finding the colors that make you feel like yourself, and not even just yourself, but your best self, that's going to allow you to show up in your life, in your relationships, in your work, in the best version and the best way you can.
And you really touched on that a lot when we were going through the analysis. What was really cool and very vulnerable was Gretta and I both showed up with zero makeup on our faces, and we do not leave the house like that. I left, the hospital to left my house to go to the hospital, have babies with lipstick and mascara on, surgeries, whatever. And so that was already stepping into this space of, oh my gosh, I've got to stare at this mirror. But to watch this transformation happen, it also felt very empowering, where both Greta and I were like, wow, maybe we can leave the house, a little more bare, because there is that confidence in that color that was radiating us from the inside, and how we saw our faces illuminate. I think this is so fascinating too, when you're thinking about, you were mentioning so many things, but like you're going on a job interview. I mean, I was like, I want to paint my bedroom a certain color, so I can look a certain way,
Get rid of all those wrinkles when I'm in the bedroom. Yeah, I like that.
Maybe where I'm getting ready in the vanity and I won't put so much makeup on, who knows? But I've played with color mostly in the yoga space. So they have the chakra system, which are energy channels, and each one correlates to a color. That was also really resonating with me, because as you were playing with the different color swatches, I was thinking, okay, heart chakra, throat chakra. And in that philosophy, it's like, oh, if something's blocked in a certain place, you wear that color to really draw that energy to what it is. So color is used. I mean, you mentioned jewel colors, but royalty is associated with certain colors. I really do now, especially after, we did this whole deep analysis, walked away with this respect for the color spectrum so much more than what I really gave it attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I feel like most of us are kind of taught not to really pay attention to that stuff. I don't know. And I think that's so sad, because as someone who is an artistic, creative person, I always have. As a little girl, I had all the colors in the giant Crayola box memorized. Before I could even read, I'd be like, Mommy, what's this color? It was important to me. And I don't understand how people don't realize how important it is. And even putting this color on that I always liked, but I wasn't really sure if if it worked for me or if it was wearing me. But then to have a professional like you be like, yes, this is your color. This is a bright winter color and you can wear it. And I felt so confident, like you said, and just alive and myself. And I felt like my skin was glowing and it made me feel completely different than if I just threw something else on and didn't really have a connection or an understanding.
Yeah, totally. And I think we fundamentally all deserve to feel like our best selves. We deserve to feel confident about who we are, and we deserve to, I'm getting a little bit mushy about it.
Yeah.
I spent so many years of my life really actively disconnecting and disassociating from my body because of all the things that we hear as women and all the things that get dragged into our mind and our head space day to day. Those like negative self-talk things of, oh, my hair isn't this way, or my skin doesn't do this, or I need all these products to whatever, to be able to go to your closet, put something on that used to make you kind of continue in that doubt and continue in that confusion and get that lifted of like, no, I like this because it's great and it makes me feel good. And I don't have to be nervous about it. And I don't have to be, conflicted or feeling like I have to double check with 300 people before I'm like confident enough to put it on. I think there's so much power and beauty in that.
There really is. I felt it. I just felt different this morning. And so I thank you for that. And I think that's a beautiful insight into your background, that you were kind of going through those things and then now have found yourself in this career path that helps other women and men. Men definitely could use this too. I'm like trying to analyze my husband's colors now.
You're not alone in that. So many of my clients tell me that actually.
But you're giving them that boost in their self-esteem and that confidence and that knowing. Like it kind of just gives you these extra roots, knowing your season, and it's fun. But I think initially I just was like, that would be so fun. But it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people come in, and I was joking yesterday about how like the typical thing I see when I have a group of 2 or 3 is that we have the instigator, right? The person who's like so excited about color analysis and like the algorithm found them, and then they bring their 2, loved ones or their 1 loved one. And then the rest are kind of like, I'm here for the vibes. So they come expecting, like fun and like something interesting, but then they leave being like, oh, this actually hit me really deeply in a way that I wasn't expecting. It like kind of touches on all of those things that we've been talking about in a way that kind of surprises a lot of people, which makes sense because it does feel like, oh yeah, we're just going to put some colors on me and whatever. We'll see what happens.
So much more than that.
I think even just how often do you just sit and look at yourself in the mirror in natural light with no makeup?
Yeah.
There was kind of this grounded and kind of come to Jesus moment. And also I had moments of like, cause I don't, like Michelle said, I do not leave the house, especially without my eyes and my eyebrows done. Yeah. My hair's so dark. I look like my eyes just disappear. But there were moments where, with the natural light coming in, I was like, gosh, my skin looks really good. And when you did put those certain colors, I was like, oh, my dark circles aren't as bad. I know I keep bringing that up, but that has been one of my insecurities my whole entire life from the time I was little were the dark circles. And there were some moments of like, you're okay without makeup. And like Michelle had said, there were certain colors we could actually leave the house. Maybe we could do this.
Yeah. And that honestly, I was thinking about that after our session, those moments that I get a little bit choked up as a color analyst, because having come from the makeup space myself, I also have the experience of like, I would not leave the house. I wouldn't go to Rite Aid or CVS without a full beat of makeup on. Like it was not going to happen. Exactly. Like I would go to the hospital, right, with makeup on. And so to be able to help create a space that people can kind of, dissolve some of those boundaries that they put on themselves and see themselves in a new light is really special. And I get a lot of clients who are kind of in transition moments in their life that I think this does end up being weirdly therapeutic. Like new moms who feel like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like I've been so focused on, and in a way, rightfully so, this like brand new person that I'm now, adding to my life and just creating the space to be like, I want to engage with myself a little bit more.
Yeah. To even put any time or energy into yourself when you have a new baby is tough.
So how did you even get into this? What was the draw and how did it cross your path? I'm super curious.
Yeah. So I've always been into art. I've always loved kind of creativity. Actually, my aunt is an artist, and I had this feeling when I was younger of I want to find my medium, but whenever I like painted or tried to do anything, it just like wouldn't work. I could visualize what I wanted the canvas to look like, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And then when I was in my teen years, I actually kind of stumbled into a job working at my aunt's kind of like salon slash, I guess for lack of a better way to describe it, like a women's store. Like it had bags and shoes and makeup and hair products and stuff like that. And she was a licensed Bare Minerals makeup retailer. Before they really had a ton of brick and mortars, a lot of it was just online sales. And I was kind of like the makeup counter girl at that Bare Minerals little kind of part of her store. And I realized very quickly, like, oh, this is my medium. Like I understand this. Like I understand the planes of the face and I understand the palette of a face. And so I got very quickly into makeup. I was so immersed in that world for a really long time. I mean, continue to be in many ways, but I absolutely loved it. Went on a completely different career path into the kind of health space. I went into public health, got my master's in public health. I had really no intention of doing anything terribly creative in like a professional space, to be honest. It just wasn't the path that I had thought for myself. I was working as a maternal and child health researcher and really loving it. But I was going through a period in my own life where I'm seeing a lot of changes in my body. And all of a sudden, my closet did not fit me anymore, which is a very weird experience. Because usually, like buy a sweater and then 3 months later you buy some pants. And then 6 months later you get some, shoes or whatever. It's a very kind of slow and steady process to build a closet where all of a sudden it was like, I've got almost nothing that fits me anymore. How on earth do I build from the ground up without spending like $1 million and driving myself crazy? And also creating that graveyard of clothes in your closet that you just buy one time and never put on your body. I literally couldn't afford to have that part of my closet at that point. So I started researching things of how do people do this? Like, how do you create a wardrobe from scratch, from like nothing, from like socks and underwear, And I found Color Analysis. And again, something when I saw it just clicked. A lot of the principles that I learned in the makeup space had translated pretty easily over. And it's not to say that it's one-to-one. Actually, I think that's a little bit of a myth that we could talk about if we wanted to, but this idea that your clothing colors and your makeup colors are 100% the same is not always true. But the kind of, again, underlying color theory or principles of how do we understand skin tones and how do we understand the colors in someone's eyes really just made sense to me. So I started getting obsessed with it. I would just read about it in my spare time for hours and hours. It was almost a part-time job. I definitely have a personality that can get like a little clingy to things. And so I would just talk about it with literally anyone who would listen. And I was starting to just for fun, type my friends and my family members and like friends of friends. And to be honest, I think my friends are the ones who really pushed me into this because they could see how passionate about it I was, but they could also see my fear of not wanting to leave the comfort of this space that I'd been in for so long, I think making big professional jumps is terrifying. And I was like not ready and not looking to do that. And so I like to joke that I was like lovingly bullied a little bit into doing this. I actually had this little color analysis party at my house with a bunch of friends. And one of those friends is a graphic designer. She made my logo and sent it to me and kind of was like,
I love your logo, by the way.
It's
so
cute,
eye-catching. Yes.
Shout out Victoria. She's amazing. But yeah, it was one of those moments I saw the logo and I was like, okay,
this is happening.
I think I'm doing this.
Oh my God.
And then it was a very slow, I was doing that on the weekends and still with my other job. And then I kind of did like part-time for both. And then it just kind of got big, I think, with TikTok and Instagram. And it just kind of exploded almost just slightly after I kind of got into it. And then, yeah, I switched on over and it's been crazy, but it's been so cool and wonderful and I love it, but it is crazy.
You took the leap. You followed your passion. So brave. And it's great that you had good friends in your life that were able to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is what you need to do.
Yeah.
That's so important.
It totally comes through you. I mean, just the minute you greeted us, it was already, you were lit up, and so to be in your space and just sit there and have, because we didn't really, we kind of had an idea, about color palettes, but like not deeply like what we sat and did. And, we were at your place for a good amount of time. And so your energy and your passion just took over and came through. And I think that's really cool because a lot of the women that we do interact with on the podcast, that is when you see people light up so much, is when they're aligned with their passion and the work just becomes their love. It comes through for sure. I already have so many people that want to connect with you. And so when you talked about doing these group parties, like, that's something else that you offer to people, is small group?
I love that idea. Yes.
Actually, that was also an idea from my friends. So shout out to them for being like immensely supportive throughout this whole thing. Yeah, I do offer parties. It's usually between like 4 to 6 people, which I realize realize it's not a huge number. I really like keeping it smaller because I do like taking that time with each client. I really am passionate about creating this training kind of based approach around color analysis because as I said to you guys yesterday, you know, we're going to spend the next few hours together, but then you live your whole lives without me. And I don't want you to feel like I'm gatekeeping any of this or you just have to take my word for it. And so even when I'm in big group spaces, you know, I try to keep that sense of like, no, I'm spending as much time with you as we need to make you feel so confident in this whole process and kind of the result that we get. So it is, you know, smaller parties, about 6. Sometimes I push it to 7 and 8, just depending on the day. But it is such a fun environment to do color analysis in, just like to get your
I can imagine.
Yeah.
A glass of wine and you know, and then you can also see what colors look like on you after, you know, you get a little extra redness in the skin. Like, is this the same or not? But so can you describe to us, if you were doing a color analysis, now we've gone through the process, right?
Yeah.
But if you're talking to someone like us who's never had this experience before, and obviously we're recording, so in a very simplistic as you possibly can you kind of just describe what you're doing and just sort of the process that people would go through?
Yeah, totally. The kind of underlying goal of color analysis is to create this idea of harmony between you and the colors that you're wearing, which feels like this big amorphous word of harmony. But the goal is that we're looking at the colors that are inherent to your skin tone, your eye color, your lip color, your natural hair color. And we're trying to create a palette that really enhances and brings out those very unique color tones in all of those different areas of, you know, your face. We go through a process of looking at different color palettes on you. It's very organized. It's very systemic. It's very procedural to make sure that we are, you know, kind of ruling things out as much we are ruling things in. And we see how all these different color families affect your features. Again, both your skin tone and your eye color and your hair color. And we're trying to find the colors that do more than anything else, again, emphasize your natural coloring and draw the eye towards you, right? Because I think there are definitely moments where we wear colors for a multitude of reasons, whether it be fun or, you know, functional or because we have sentimental attachment. But for color analysis, the goal is that we are creating that palette based on your natural coloring and how we want you to be the center of attention in that.
Awesome. Yeah, you even covered our hair and everything so that that wouldn't distract away from, I mean, it's really so much about just so that you could go gray. You could be, you know, I mean, eventually I'm sure my hair is going to be white. That's just like all the women in my family. And like now that I know that I'm a bright winner, I could totally see how that will transition and be just fine. So do you ever tell people the hair color that they've dyed their hair maybe isn't working for them or help people with that? Because I feel like people kind of experiment and try different things. And
Yeah. I actually talk about that a lot with my clients because so many people dye their hair for a multitude of reasons. There's a lot of talk on social media around hair color. There's a lot of myths that like sometimes your natural hair color is not your best hair color for yourself.
Oh.
I don't agree with that.
Right.
Fundamentally, it kind of goes against the ethos of color analysis, which is like bringing out your features, right? It's not to say that you have to keep your natural hair color, but it is something that I talk about with clients. My motto, which we talked about a little bit yesterday too, was tools, not rules. So I'm definitely not the type of analyst that's going to say, oh, you should definitively move this direction, more than just talk to them about how different colors are going to affect the perception of their features. I like to joke that your hair is kind of like the drapes that we put underneath you, but you just never take it off, right? Or at least you don't take it off very often. You change it sometimes. So yeah, I do talk about that with clients and trying to figure out how do we make that hairpiece feel like something that is giving you the same feeling as some of your favorite colors that we drape on you during the process.
yes, like I'm wondering if someone came to you, would you be able to help guide them if they wanted to do something totally different than their natural hair color?
Oh yeah. And I do that all the time actually, because I think there is a lot of confusion around, you know, again, like in the makeup world and the hair space of like exactly what is the right tone. And there's a lot of that, like if I have green eyes, then I should do this, or should, you know, if I have fair skin that I can't go blonde or I shouldn't go blonde, you know, all these things. So yeah, I have actually a add-on service even that's specifically oriented towards makeup and hair.
Very cool.
And I give people personalized recommendations of hair colors that I think would be the most harmonious to them based on my conversation with them and kind of what some of their goals are.
Makeup
Love
would be
that.
awesome.
Yes.
Because I feel like we get in these ruts and I don't know, every 10 years or so, I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing the same thing and it's not working for me anymore. Like as I'm starting to get more wrinkles and stuff, I have to kind of switch things up and that would be so helpful.
Yeah, I actually love when my clients come in for the add-on service for makeup and hair because, you know, it is a little bit my roots, right? So I love makeup. I love the space. I still love it. And I really tailor it to basically whatever the client's goals are. So sometimes I've had clients who are like, I never wear makeup. Can you just kind of teach me? Like, can you give me that like 101 basic lesson, which we do and I love, and we can talk about. Again, maybe they want to focus on their dark circles, or they want to make sure that they're finding the right foundation color or whatever the thing is.
Well, you gave me some really cool tips. Being a neutral, you were saying it's tough to find your right foundation color.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? You were saying something about like green drops added to my foundation. And
Yes. So as much as I love the makeup world, it is unfortunately not perfect. And the naming kind of culture around makeup is there's no standardization, which is so frustrating. And I'm sure you guys have had the experience of like, you're a neutral warm, just for argument's sake, in one foundation, and then you go to a different brand and all of a sudden that doesn't work for you. And you're like, what has happened between these two things? And so when we're looking at color analysis, we're very focused on what's called the undertone, which is that bottom layer of skin. That same word is used in the makeup space, this idea of undertone. The problem is that even though we are, in the color analysis world, focused on the undertone and kind of exclusively that way, even if that top layer of skin is a little different. In the makeup world, we do have to consider that top layer of skin, of course, because we're trying to mimic the entirety of your skin, not just bring out one layer of it. So what can be very cool in that makeup space is when you're kind of trudging through it and you're like, I have no idea what I am, and it feels like everything is a little bit wrong. If you understand that underlying color theory that we talked through yesterday, you can actually add little color correctors, which you can get for like $6 at the drugstore, to your foundations that you currently have to color correct them to your perfect shade without having to spend another $40 on a brand new, high-end foundation at Sephora, which saves you a ton of money. And it also makes sure that you can kind of make sure you're creating your perfect match, which is so hard to find. And frankly, it's mostly not anyone's fault. Not even mostly. It's no one's fault when you can't find it, because it's made almost intentionally confusing. I think. I mean,
so you have to buy a whole bunch of different ones.
And if you find the one, then you have to stick with it, right?
Yes.
It's harder to jump ship.
Well, I had the one and then they changed to a different formula. Yes.
Yep.
And it looked orange on me. I was like,
Yep.
I made a video for TikTok and Instagram and I was like, oh my God, I look orange. What is happening?
Yeah.
It was so bad. So that's great to know, because I still have it. It's a whole brand new bottle.
Yeah.
I can just tweak it a little
Green
bit.
drops to it.
100%. Because the thing that we talked about in your case specifically is that you have more of a neutral kind of tonality to your overall skin. But one of the things that's really frustrating is when you're neutral cool, and especially in more of that fair to light category, it's so pinky. Like most of the colors out there are this very pinky version of cool, which of course exists. There are plenty of people who are fair and kind of have that strong pink undertone or current skin. But there's also a lot of fair neutrals who don't have pink in their skin. Really, it's more a predominance of kind of blue and maybe even a slight yellow tone in that overtone, right? And so you're then stuck in this like, well, I know I'm not cool pink, and I know I'm not that like very warm, what looks on you orangey kind of shade. So like where does that put me? And instead of, just saying like, well, there's nothing to be done, have these tiny tools that make it again 100% personalized to you can be so helpful.
Again,
in the morning.
building confidence in women. Thank you for that. And I think the other thing that really popped out at me when you were talking about these things is just how we are all so uniquely beautiful and different. And you were saying you try not to even, do a little mini analysis on people before you start, because really there are so many little intricacies in everyone. And I just think that's like the fingerprint, like we are all just so unique in our own way. And we should be happy about that and proud of it, instead of trying to blend in or trying to be like somebody we're not, or,
Yep. And that's another thing I think color analysis does such a good job at, which is breaking these kind of monolithic beauty standards that I think we're so forced into from such a young age.
Such a young age.
And so instead of being like, oh, well, I need to do everything in my power to look like this one version of what a human could be or look like, you're saying, where am I? Genuinely, in my DNA, who am I? What is my unique color palette that I have? And let me flatter that. Let me put my attention there instead of putting my attention to trying to fit this like weird societal norm.
Yeah.
That maybe doesn't serve you.
Yes, that's such an important point. Like I remember when I used to wax eyebrows back in the day, and people would come in and they'd have a picture of a magazine. It's like, I want these eyebrows. And their eyebrows, there's no way. That's not happening. That's not your design, you know? And so I do love your philosophy of enhancing what we already have and really being seen, you know, for you as opposed to trying to change a feature. And I mean, honestly, on a personal level, I remember being young and not liking my eye color. And really, when I heard that contacts came out that were colored, it was like, oh, I would love to have brown contacts, because when my girlfriends put on their black eyeliner, you know, and their red lipstick, I was like, ooh, you've got that like hard look. And back then that's what I was going for. And here I show up and these green eyes are just like looking like glass. And I go, I look like, you know, this, I don't know, like alien coming out or something. Like that's how, what was going on in my mind. But really to take on that thought of, what if I change that perspective and go, no, how do I enhance what's already here and not just what the trend says, or, you know, not what, I don't know, the standard is of beauty at the moment, because that's the other thing. And I think we're moving in that direction. 100%. I've definitely seen that shift in the beauty world and
finally
movies, you know, all of that. It's yes. Thank you.
We grew up in the 80s. And for me, as you were talking about that, wanting to look like someone else and then instead emphasizing what you have, it really brought up, I remember all the way from when I was like a little girl, seeing Barbie and thinking, I want to look just like Barbie. She's beautiful. That's what beautiful is. I couldn't be further from Barbie. I wanted to be blonde, tan with blue eyes. And I was never going to be that. And I spent like a huge chunk of my life, even tried to dye my hair as light as I could. And it just looked hideous. But trying to fit whatever that look was that was put into my head when I was just probably like, when I got my first Barbie at 4 or 5 years old. That's so sad to me.
Yeah.
It's come a long ways. I'm glad they're not just promoting. She's still the number one Barbie though. And for a lot of years, it was the blonde, blue-eyed, that would be your Hollywood star.
That represented the all-American look, right?
Yes,
It was like, that is the look you were trying to go for. Yeah. So for those of us who don't fit that, which are all three of us at this table, actually, none of us have that, right? And so, yeah, it's nice to see that we can just find ways to enhance our own beauty.
Yeah.
It is.
Because I think one of the reasons too that it feels so unsettled when we try to be pushing ourselves into these boxes is that not only is it, you know, not working for us because we're fighting ourselves, it feels really inauthentic.
Right.
I think at the heart of it, like we're trying so hard to fit this thing, but then when we try to do that, we just feel like we're losing ourselves.
It's draining and exhausting, actually.
And I think harder on your spirit and yourself than feeling like you're not that thing. I think I think betraying is maybe a strong word, but that sense of like, I am not good enough, that fundamental feeling of I am not good enough, I think is really what hurts more than anything else. And to get away from that, I think it's so important.
Yeah, we received those messages so early from so many different places too. Coming to see you is one way that you can really kind of unravel some of that bullshit, really, that we've been reprogrammed some of it.
Yeah. Just find your color.
And you'll feel amazing in your skin, in your natural hair, in who you were supposed to show up in this world as.
Reorienting and reprioritizing to yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think is really powerful.
Well, and you used the word a lot yesterday also, and we talked about it today right now as we've been recording, but the word harmony. And I think essentially that's really what we're in search of all the time, is this feeling of peace and balance and just feeling really good. We talked about confidence, but all of that starts with an inner peace. And if you don't have that, then that disruption leads you to start, you know, grasping at all these different things that are out there, you know, the world says are good, right? Those definitions. But yeah, that word harmony was just, I loved it. The minute you said that, I already felt this like, oh, we're harmonizing here. Okay, like let me relax and settle into this. Let me forget that I have no makeup on. Let me forget that my eyes are green and that I've always tried to change certain things within that element as well. And let me just receive, you know, and through that letting go, you know, and just kind of submitting to whatever you were doing was literally enlightening. It's like, oh my gosh, my face just illuminated just by putting this one color on, you know, or these 5 colors within this range. I don't know. I know there's specific terminology, but you know, she's got all these like beautiful color panels swatches of color that we were fabric that we were playing with. And that was really what was showing us, like this visual of the colors and how we interacted with them. So that was really cool. Yeah.
I love the orientation towards harmony too, which is why I use the word so much. I think it's kind of this fundamental promise that I am focusing on you today. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to put you anywhere. I'm not trying to put you in a specific zone or box. I'm not trying to pull you away from yourself. I'm actually trying to pull you towards yourself. And I think color analysis has gone a long way since the kind of origin story of color analysis in the 70s and 80s, which I think did actually grapple with a lot of what we're talking about in terms of that beauty standard. There was a lot of white centricism in it. There was a lot of really kind of limiting and box kind of forming kind of rules, quote unquote, that if you had this and that, and if you were this and that, that you had to be in these things. That actually the kind of, I would say, rebirth or like the new version of color analysis is very intentionally trying to strip that away, which is super important. I won't lie and say it's gone. There's a lot of that out there, and it like really drives me insane. But I think this idea, and again, orientation of harmony in the purest form of the word, of taking away the outside world and just focusing in on you, it's getting more and more powerful in the way that color analysis can achieve that.
It's interesting too that you were bringing up kind of this like white centric model, because, as obviously we evolve in each decade and we go further, there's a lot of mixed races now too. And so it's really interesting because it's not so just like the black, the white, the brown, like things aren't so categorized anymore. We've got so many different bloodlines coming in that also show, I know people who have very dark skin with really light eyes, and so you've got all this color variation happening that you can't just look at primary colors, you've got to like expand all of that just as we evolve as people. So it's really interesting to think about where we started and those limitations and where we're moving. And the variety of color, oh my gosh, like you brought in today so many color swatches. And so if you look at that, again, when we talked about like one shade of green could come in so many different shades. It's not just one, and just that alone, right. All the colors that we can play with now, it's really amazing what we have to work with. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And very unique.
Very unique.
So unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, kind of really wanting to honor the individuality. Like I never have the same person in my chair. Every single day, I have a different person in my chair. And even people in the same season look so different from each other. Right. And there's a lot of beauty in that.
And it has, I think what Michelle was trying to say, it has nothing to do with race.
Yeah,
like
no.
you could be, whatever shade of skin color you are, you could be a spring, you could be a soft summer, you could be African-American with brown eyes and also be the same as Michelle or I in the color season.
100%.
So that is really cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool how
it's not boxy, like you said, anymore. It's
No.
like we're not limited. There's so much freedom in this.
like when I was younger and I just thought I could only wear like royal blue and ruby red and forest green. And that was like jewel tones, which I guess was sort of a winter, but I didn't really understand that terminology back then. But
yeah, it's a little bit generalized. For sure. I say all the time, the way that color analysis is often presented in social media is still very boxy. And I think that's one of the things that I really try to deconstruct as much as I can with my own social media and with my website and just the way that I approach it, because there's a lot of disservice in that, of giving the same examples for spring, the same examples for winter, the same examples for all these things. It's actually, I think, confusing, more limiting than it needs to be. If I were to put every single person that I typed in a particular season in a room over the time that I've been doing this, there would be very little through line. You wouldn't look at that group of people and go like, just from the surface characteristics of like, oh yes, this is a very, homogenous group of people. There's so much diversity and variety. I have a lot of compassion for people who look at color analysis in the space and then they think they have to be this thing because this is the example that they're seeing over and over again.
Yes.
And they just don't resonate with those colors. And
Yes.
it makes sense because they're not their colors,
Right. Yesterday, I was telling you, I really thought soft summer was blonde hair, blue eyed. It has nothing to do with that necessarily, obviously, because Michelle's a soft summer.
Yeah.
You really need a professional.
Yes.
You really need to come and see Colors with Kate is what I'm saying, because there's no way, because I tried to figure this out. And you're right. The way they portray it online, they'll show these celebrities and they all look the same.
Mm-hmm.
All the Autumns are olive skin with brown eyes and light brown hair. And they wear a lot of golds and like rusts and like, okay, that's an Autumn. That's not me. Or as much as I tried to figure out what I was spinning in circles, because they like to lump people in really specific categories online, and you're not going to figure it out on your own.
It causes more confusion, I think, than it helps. Mm-hmm. And I certainly got stuck in that. Like when I first got into color analysis, like way before I was doing this professionally, I think there's a point when, if you're getting really into it, you're like, I think I'm all of them and none of them at the same time.
That's how I felt.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I literally have no idea, because it's like you have these inherent feelings about what feels good on yourself, but then you don't see yourself in the examples that are being given. So then you start doubting yourself and you go, oh, well, I couldn't be that. So then I must be this. And then you try those colors, but then those don't feel right. And then that's confusing. So then you go back to where you thought you were, but then you get reinforced, I suppose, like negatively reinforced of like, oh, but I can't be this because I don't look like this person. And it's just like this really vicious cycle that I think is, again, my goal is to break through that as much as I can.
That's not harmonious at all. That feels very chaotic and crazy.
Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, I love that that's how I found you, was because it started. This was something that our parents did and it was big, but it's come so far. It's not the same color analysis that our parents had done. But it's funny to see some of the older ladies being all excited that this is back, because I was in the nail salon and I was talking about it. And this older woman, she was like probably in her 70s. And she was like, oh my gosh, what? Color analysis? That's what we did back in the day. They're doing that again. But like you said, the spectrum is so much broader and there's so many other categories now. And it's evolved. Like everything should evolve.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of really fun, beautiful experiences with clients who come in across generations. Like I'll have, grandma, mom, and daughter come in and they'll do a session together. And, people will have done it in the 80s and they're like, oh my gosh, I remember this, but I never really quite figured out what I was. I've even had clients come in who thought they figured it out in the 80s. They had spent, years of their life kind of wearing those colors because they saw the original book that was very boxy and very like kind of, what it reminds me of? It's like those quizzes that we had in Cosmopolitan magazine where it was like the flow chart, so it was like, oh, I have this eye color and this hair color and this.
I'm this.
Exactly. And so then they come in and they're like, I don't know. I just was never sure. Like it just never fully resonated. Like I'm not, kind of what you were describing. You came in, you were told this thing and you were not quite sure. And sometimes like in your case, it's close, but not quite. And that's where that kind of chasm of doubt comes in.
Yes.
In others, it's completely different seasons,
Wow.
Because that first iteration was so problematic. I mean, I have a lot of gratitude that it started, right?
Yes.
Like I think fundamentally there's a lot of beauty in the idea of the system, but the original application of it was just, again, a little bit limited. So it's a really beautiful experience to get to talk to women who like maybe were typed in the 80s or typed themselves in the 80s. They come in and they're like, I'm not quite sure if this is right or what's going on. And me being able to say like, yeah, for the system that you were typed in, that makes sense. But actually we've grown a lot. A lot has changed since then, rightfully so. And here's why this didn't feel good. X, Y, Z. This is where you are now.
And that could just be the refresh that someone needs. Colors aren't what they were in the 80s. The trends have changed so much. Colors that might have looked good on someone, they may not even have had the opportunity to try them because that wasn't even a trendy color back then, but now it is. So probably something you'd want to do every so often, get a little reboot, refresh on your colors. I mean, I think it can help so many things. It's not just what you wear. Even when I mentioned the nail salon, a lot of times I'll get so overwhelmed at looking at all those different colors and I'll want to try some fun ones, but then I'm scared. Well, does that even look good on my skin tone? It might look good on the lady next to me, but we don't have the same skin tone. After working with you yesterday, now I know what to look for. And it's like I have this map. And I've got it in my back pocket when I go shopping, when I go to the nail salon, when I go look at makeup. I've kind of got my tools, like you said, and I know, and in this little map, and it can guide me and I don't feel so lost.
Yeah.
Like I have a little definition or it's refined a little bit.
It gives you home base.
Yes.
I think ultimately the benefit of this idea of harmony is that it's very simplifying when you want it to be. right? When you want to not have to spend 15 minutes at the nail salon deciding what's the right color.
I'm the worst.
I'm gonna bring out my little color palette and be like, okay, just give me one of these.
Yes.
No,
I'll take one of those.
Yeah. And like to not have to be trying on 3 different outfits before you land on the one. Like when you want to simplify and just find those things that just, are going to make you feel good. It's a really good tool. And then again, when you have other goals beyond this idea of harmony, you don't have to feel limited to it either. I think that's one of the things online too that I see all the time is I think people get scared that when you get your color palette, like I'm expecting you to only ever wear those colors for the rest of your life with absolutely no exceptions. And like,
if you want to get hot pink nails when you go to Hawaii or wherever, like a tropical vacation, do it.
100%. Yeah. I don't even exclusively wear my colors, right? And like, I'm fine. That's fine. That is fine. Fundamentally, what we're trying to do in color analysis is make people feel good, make them feel good about themselves, make them feel like they're expressing their inside on the outside. And if there's a color that you love that isn't in your palette that does that for you, hell yes, wear it. Please wear it. You should wear it. You must wear it.
It's about how you feel.
Yeah. Exactly. But if you're going on a first date, you might want to pull your color palette out and be like, you know what? Going for one of these. I want to look, I want to look my best self in those moments, but expression, right? I mean, you can't take away how somebody presents in the world. And, listen, if I want to wear the bright whatever,
or black.
Or black, I'm still going to wear my black. I can just do some other things around it if I want.
Example of that, actually.
I'm going to do what I want to do. But if I'm taking headshots now, I may not show up in black anymore. Like at this point, I may be like, hey, there was this other color that just illuminating me in a certain way. And that's the look I'm going for, or I want to soften the features up a little bit. Cause that's the other thing we talked about was, we said even earlier on the podcast where it's like, you see the eyes coming forward and that may not be what I'm going for. It's a whole different look. So yeah, it's really cool to just have some form of reference. And also I love that we learn too, the comparison in finding those things that work for us. So like we could hold something up to ourselves and we're like, hey, we might look kind of good. And then you throw another color over it and you're like, oh, wait, actually this color looks better. Or, so we learned some practical tools where we could be at home in our own closets with what we have now. So we're not saying you have to get rid of all your things like,
Please do not do that.
You don't have to do that.
No. And I have a lot of clients too, I think that come in who like, they get super energized by this.
Yes.
I totally understand because like I am constantly energized by this, but they want to kind of do like that full revamp all at once.
Yes.
And I am like slow and steady.
Okay. That's good for me to hear because I'm kind of in that headspace right now. I'm like, I hate everything in my closet right now.
It's the first thing she kind of said to me. Yeah, when I showed up today, I'm like, ooh, look at you and your, beautiful yellow. And she's like, I know, but my closet, I'm all, oh gosh. Gretta's going on a big shopping spree. I can feel it. It's happening right now.
Sorry, Steve.
Which if you want to, like, please, do it. That's fun too. But I think there's not a rush. You have your whole life to start implementing this. I'm very much on the side of, take your time.
Yes.
Introduce it in a way that feels good to you, that feels authentic to you, that brings joy rather than stress.
Yeah.
I don't want any of my clients feeling like they can't wear their clothes anymore because it's not part of their palette. It's not that.
Or they have to get rid of all their black if that's their go-to. But one other thing about the black, because I do want to address the black. I think a lot of people wear black and a lot of people, right? For whatever reason. But what I love that I learned from you was that, hey, maybe you don't need the blackest black. If you still want to wear black, it could just be the more muted shade of black, that refined, like wash your stuff a few extra times. Don't buy, I was buying this detergent that would actually make your blacks blacker. Woolite. I was buying Woolite. Like it's got to be the blackest black. And so these are little things now that, again, I'm totally approaching my black very different.
Like charcoal or dark brown, just those little tweaks, right?
Mm-hmm. Small things that you can do. So that's everything that I love because I know that there probably are listeners going, black is my go-to, right? It's the color. And actually I learned that black is okay for me to wear. I mean, not that it's not because there's not hard and fast rules, but it was an okay color for me. However, if I muted it down, it was even better. So these are the things that I think when you're working with someone like you can really dial in on all of that and not just, it's the 4 colors or something, that you're honing in on. Yeah. It's really cool.
So much of it is presented so limiting kind of in a limiting orientation.
Yeah.
And yeah, because the constant, I hear this all the time because people are terrified of losing their black. I find this with the metals all the time too. People are terrified of losing gold or silver.
Oh yeah, we talked about the metals.
Yeah, which is very common. And I think it's really not so binary. Like everything in life, right? Like it's not so binary. Sure, jet, inky, truest black is part of the winter palette, generally speaking, right? But like summers can wear really, really deep charcoal and even a very soft black, like a washed jean black, and it's still going to be so harmonious on them. Is it going to be, 100% the same as other colors? Maybe not, but that tiny little tweak, as you're mentioning, is going to really do something for the way that you see yourself and the way that your skin appears and your features show up. So you don't have to feel like, if you don't get this one color, this one metal, that it's going to be like the end for you and that you could never wear it again. It's like these tiny little tweaks that actually have such a big impact and that you're not going to really feel that different day to day. And, if I just switched all of your super jet blacks in your closet for a slightly softer, like as I mentioned to you yesterday, just throw them in the wash for like 4 hot runs, and just let it be that. And then you're done. I think it just brings a lot more comfort to people. I think there's an imagination of you're going to get your palette and what if it's not anything that you have, and then you have to
it's scary.
Yeah. Scary. And I like how you're like, there's, you can still do whatever the hell you want at the end of the day. like if you're going to the gym and you want to wear black because you don't want sweat stains, totally get it. And all of us. Okay.
Do your thing.
All my workout clothes are black, which I can wear black really well. That was fascinating to find out because even without makeup, I actually looked okay. That was like, whoa.
I actually think that was one of the colors that you mentioned. Oh, I wouldn't even have to wear makeup with this.
Yes.
That was one of the ones that really shocked you.
I would have thought black would have made me look like death, but it did the opposite. So it's just so funny how different everybody is and how certain things work and don't. And I really just had such a great experience coming and having the analysis done with you. I think it offered so much more than I even realized. I think for anybody listening, this is a great way to either treat yourself or a gift for someone that in your family that you love, or a girlfriend that's going through a divorce, or like you said, a new mom. Getting
married.
We all just need those little extra boosts in life sometimes. And I think this is a great way to do it. Color analysis, having that done for yourself, giving yourself like that little boost and little roadmap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's kind of a version of self-care.
It is.
I was like, such a big thing in the space.
It is, but it's true. I agree.
But a lot of people don't associate that either when they're thinking about this. And it is. So I love, you've got a site, right? You've got ways that we can reach you. So we'll make sure that we put all of that in the notes so people can get connected, and we'll have a YouTube video out too. So some of the stuff that we're talking about, people can actually see it. I highly encourage anyone who's listening to this that has a little thought in their mind, if it's not the time for you, it might be for somebody else, and just do it.
It's fun. I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's really fun.
It's fun and it's informative at the same time. You just learn so much. We should all be learning more about ourselves, as we grow and age and in different phases of our lives. Why not?
Yeah. Invest in yourself.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a blast. Thanks I'm such a nerd about color, so I'm so grateful for any opportunity I get to yap about it. So thank you guys so much for having me on.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you liked what you heard and we're your girls,
please share and add a review on iTunes so we can continue to grow our circle. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at That's My Girl Podcast.